She had a farm near Sacramento, California. My father came to America as a young teenager and was educated here. As the train rattled on, Mama was constantly preoccupied. Yes, we all faced an unknown future, but she was not going to surrender to the angst of our condition. She had stuffed into her luggage special treats for the children, a few lollipops, boxes of animal crackers, and Cracker Jacks. The room was a bare 16 by 20-foot space with raw wood plank walls, 3 windows, and a floor of wooden planks. Sitting in one corner like a big, fat, practical joke was a black, pot-bellied stove. Mama stood near the door silently, appraising the room. Just then, we heard voices and thumping from the other side of the plank wall. It was our next-door neighbors moving in. "Holy jeez, it's hot in here," a male voice said. After takeoff, my sweaty hands gripped the armrest firmly. A portly businessman sitting next to me smiled. With a tight smile, I turned to him slowly. I answered, "Yes, I grew up in an internment camp in Arkansas, but as a matter of fact, it was an American camp for American citizens of Japanese ancestry." I got it out. It felt good. He sighed and looked down, shaking his head. "A terrible thing, he said. "You know, during a war, people do crazy things. One of my neighbors in Denver is a Nisei, sweetest guy you could know, veteran of the war in Europe." He sat there mutely. I excused myself to go to the lavatory. I locked the door, and the tears began to flow. I got home from class one night, and Daddy looked up from reading the Japanese community paper and said to me, "I circled an ad here in the paper that might interest you. Here, take a look." It said, "Casting for voices to dub film." Daddy turned and faced me directly. "You're determined, are you?" he asked. "Yes," I answered. "Then do it." I was stunned. Before I could respond, he had an academic degree. UCLA, as you know, has a distinguished school of theater. Study there, and when you finish, they will grant you a bachelor's degree. It will make your future a bit less perilous. If you go to New York, you had better be prepared to do it on your own. On the other hand, if you study acting at UCLA, your mother and I would be happy to cover your expenses." He might have heard my gasp over the phone. "Now, don't get all worked up over it," he cautioned. "There'll be a lot of competition for this one, but I thought the interview process might be a useful experience for you to have." This is the man I wanted to represent me? I thought, I'll show you. I'm going to get that part. I got the part. During the course of the rehearsal, I noticed that Harry was having difficulty with a lengthy, rather convoluted courtroom speech at the climax of the drama. His performance was brilliant. I couldn't help thinking to myself, I love this. I love being an actor and being a part of all this. I knew now I had made the right decision. Bowers was looking for a young Asian actor who could play the role of a young Chinese cannery worker, Wang, who ages from 18 to 80. He greeted me cheerfully when I arrived at his office at Warner and handed me a few pages from the script. With Bowers and the director of the film, Vincent Sherman, looking on, I read one scene from the character's youth and another as the old man Wang. Sherman said, "Young man, you're a fine actor, but I'm just a bit concerned about the old age makeup. Could we ask you?" Then he called in an assistant. A hulking man with a genial smile came in. "Al, Can you hold the skin here stretched real taut while I dapple it with the latex? He asked, pointing to my forehead. A week later, I got the call from Fred telling me to start packing for a 2-week location trip to Alaska. I was doing Ice Palace. A torrent of conflicting emotions raged inside me. Finally, I said, "Let me think about this, Jack. I'll call you back in an hour." I walked the streets of the city for that hour. Finally, I went into a phone booth and called Jack. Swallowing my pride, I said to him, "Jack, I'll do it." It was a pilot for a series, he explained. A space thing. Something about the future. My part would be great. I was to meet the creator-producer, a Gene Roddenberry. I took down the information on a notepad that quickly turned wet and messy. I thanked Fred, hung up, and tiptoed back to the shower. I couldn't make out what I had written. "Morning," I said to the receptionist. "George Takei here to see Mr. Rosenberry, please." She smiled gently and corrected me. "That's Gene Roddenberry. Please have a seat." Oh, great, I thought. When I'm under stress, I run. As I waited to hear, I ran long and hard. He was refreshingly down to earth. "Well, Jimmy," I said, "I get a strong smell from this production." What do you mean?" On that first day, instead of meeting an actor, I met Mr. Spock. I wanted to get to know Leonard Nimoy. I hoped he might have some news about the Star Trek pilot. "Bill, how have you been?" I shouted out as soon as I spotted him on the set. He was dressed in rumpled tropical clothes, and I was resplendent in my barrister's gown with a tiny barrister's wig perched on my head. He turned smiling as I rushed up to him. "Well, have you heard anything about it yet?" I asked. He looked embarrassed and smiled sheepishly. "Well, at least you don't have to wear it. I feel ridiculous with this on." I was puzzled. What was he talking about? "I hate this," he wailed. "I feel like a walking joke." Even in my hatred, I couldn't help but feel sorry for Walter. He looked so pathetic. Ricardo Montalban was, as they used to say in Hollywood, bigger than life. I opened the wooden door and met a man who couldn't have been more different than Fred. Where Fred was low-keyed and conservatively dressed, the man who greeted me was a staccato-talking, gesticulating cowboy. He wore a Western-style shirt and jeans, and on his feet were a pair of elaborately tooled cowboy boots. Then I noticed he was reading Dickens. I started to ask, "Excuse me, but aren't you—" The man turned to me, and then I saw the flash of recognition in his eyes. "Guess what?" I had never heard Walter's voice so heavy with foreboding. "Bill is going to be directing Star Trek V." "Oh, my God," I intoned. "What are we going to do?" Harv Bennett was once again assigned to come up with an idea, and he came up with an incredible whopper. "You won't believe what I just heard." Walter's voice trembled with incredulity.